The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Jackassery Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Jackassery Shaun and Jackassery Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late-night conservative talk, Jackassery Radio.
Jackassery. Jackassery.
Radio.
Jackassery. Jackassery.
Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jackassery Radio Show.
Do what?
On the March.
Are you pulling your groin again already? Like, the show's just starting, and you're already over there pulling your groin. You missed it last week.
I have recovered from my groin pull.
You sound
Very
good.
much. Yeah, I sound a lot better.
You're able to talk. You're not screaming out to your deity.
Well, exactly. Like I normally am. Oh, it is good to be back. I do apologize for missing last
Well,
week.
it's great to see we got the band back together.
We're getting the band back together.
You know what's
man.
great is BZ actually noted last week. He's like, wow, when Shaun's not here, we actually get through topics.
Five. You'll notice that it's much harder to hear Mark tonight than normal. There's a reason for that. His old ass is muted.
BZ, meet bus.
This is the driver of your bus this evening. That would be Big Nose.
Yes, thank you.
Bus driver
Thank
Big
you.
Nose.
I'm here all week.
Oh, man. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back.
Guys taking the home last week. I'm one of those people, when I don't get sick a lot. I get sick every once in a great while. This year it seems like I've been getting it more than ever.
Hello, kids.
Yeah, well, that and just life in general, right? But one of the things that did happen is whenever I get a fever, I'm just junk. I can't even fake that. I can fake anything else.
Yeah, it's only when you have a fever.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's why I said that. Is something else you want to just yap about? All right, mute one. I'm a goddamn show by myself. I don't care.
He who controls the board controls the world.
Mute one. So it was one of those weirdest things where as soon as I woke up that day, my fever was still like starting to rise. It was like 99.2, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be." And I felt like junk immediately. I slept more in the 2 days than I had in the month prior. It's just horrendous, dude.
That's your body telling you.
That's called fatherhood.
No, it's called old fucking age. Is what it is. It's called not recovering like you used to.
I noticed when you said that, we both looked at BZ.
Don't think I didn't notice you noticing that I was noticing that.
Well, he is the elder. Lee.
Pliny.
Pliny. So look, I have an update on one of our favorite hacks.
Okay. How's the arm there? What else did he chase?
Yeah, no, nothing. So the ambulance chasing hack, I think he might be turning over a new leaf.
Oh no.
We need to call him His High Holiness. Or something.
That's Triple H. We could call him Triple H.
Triple H. I like holiness or supreme.
How about the Holy Litigator?
The Holy Litigator. Well, here's this thing. So I found out he's doing some online
And just so everyone knows, we have a friend of the show who is a friend.
Yeah.
And is an attorney and a hack.
Right,
Okay.
he's an attorney, but I don't know how he got his law degree because he doesn't understand the Constitution, which is kind of weird. He's kind of a liberal, which is why he chases ambulance and does personal injury.
He understands the Constitution and how to subvert it.
And how to subvert it, right. He hates America, is basically what it comes down to, and the only reason he loves America is because he makes money through litigation.
Right. I bet you he absolutely loves the free market system when he makes money from it.
Not the free market system, he loves the free money
The free
system.
money system, right. I wonder how he feels about tort reform.
Yeah, we can go into that later.
Yeah.
So anyways, he's getting his online, I want to say online degree, but it's not an online degree. It's an online, probably the same way he got his law degree, I'm guessing.
That's where federal judges get theirs.
Right. So he's getting some online thing so that he could be like a minister for a day.
Oh.
Because apparently there's somebody he wants to marry.
A day.
For a day.
For a nominal fee.
So now I'm going to call him. So he's turning over a new leaf, I think. Instead of chasing ambulances, because he did trip that one time, I think maybe now he's going to be like marrying people. And it's great. He's a lib, so he's going to be marrying everybody, right? Like people to dogs.
He doesn't care who it is. Right.
He doesn't care who or what it is.
No,
I'm guessing.
Horses are people too, right?
Right.
So I have a couple questions about this.
So first of all, we need a title.
Okay.
Is it His Holiness? But that's already taken with the whole Catholic thing.
Right.
And is it? I don't know.
Well, if it was a judge, it would be His Robliness.
His Robliness. He's not a judge. He's not that
I
awesome.
like the High Holy Litigator.
The High Holy Litigator.
His Shingliness.
Father Ambulance Chaser.
Father Ambulance Chaser. And can his theme song be Papa Don't Preach?
Yes.
Can we call him Papa?
No.
Give us enough time. We'll get there. We'll figure it out.
Well, and, it's kind of funny too because you brought up the wedding thing. And I'm going to be out one and in one at some point in the next couple months here.
Right.
And I had to go get fitted this week. And
how'd that go?
The guy had really gentle hands.
That is so nice.
And I actually
That's
told
convenient.
him that. Folks,
did you really
have fun?
When you see him pull out the speculum, though, and it's cold, you got a problem. Did he ask you to sit on the table and put your feet into these little stirrup thingies?
No, but it was in the back of a van, which I thought was strange.
That's always positive.
No, so I go in for a fitting, and the guy's obviously new at what he's doing, and he's being trained. So he's nervous, and you could tell he's nervous about touching another person. Like, it's personal space, right? If you're raised with any sort of kind of normal rules in your life, then you know that that's just an awkward thing to randomly touch somebody. Well, fittings, you get personal, right? They have to go into everywhere. So,
well, unless you have a leg monitor on you.
Exactly. So we're sitting there, and he's like, all right, I'm really sorry, but I have to do your neck. And I could tell that he is nervous. And the girl who's helping was like, don't worry. Like he
has a neck fetish.
He goes to do my neck, and he's measuring my neck out, and I go, you have really soft hands. Well, of course, he immediately freezes, and he's got that look on his face where he doesn't know where I'm going with this. And I can see the girl behind him smirking, so I already know I have her attention to what's going on. Well, now he continues. And he's doing my arms, my shoulders, so he gets around my chest.
Tell me he did your inseam.
No, not yet.
Okay.
He gets around my chest to do around the chest, and all I said was, do you always smell this good? And he was a guy of darker complexion, right? He wasn't black. He wasn't Hispanic, but he could have been like Italian, or I've never seen somebody turn 15 shades of red so fast in all of my life. And so finally, I felt
That's the name of your book, 50 Shades of Red.
15 Shades of 15, not even 50.
Whatever, 15.
I literally had to say to the guy, I'm like, listen, I'm just screwing with you, dude. Because he was so afraid to touch me at that point, he didn't know which way to go first. And he was like, oh, man! He's like, I didn't know what you taught.
He wanted to know if he had to go and get the big tongs you pick up trash on the street with.
It was like I was on fire. He didn't want to touch me.
You know what, though? You'd have crapped yourself if he was measuring your inseam and he said, okay, so where's the tip start?
Yeah, no, exactly. I wouldn't have crapped myself.
Right, you'd have been like, it's right here.
I'm well aware. I am well aware.
It's my left leg.
So that was my fun story for the week. It was nice, but yeah.
How do you measure a shoe for a penis anyway? I've always wondered that.
It's very difficult. You need a penis horn.
Good.
So
yeah,
I think that's important.
That makes sense. That's logical.
Yeah. Have you ever used one?
I think we're getting
No. On yourself.
That's a little interference here.
That's not funny.
Yeah, it actually kind of is.
Yeah, little something. Train's going through.
So, I have 3 segments wrapped in this one segment.
Okay.
The first is here's why tax dollars should never fund a university.
Agador in the chat room says the problem with that horn is the instep. Whatever that means, I don't know.
You just kind of shuffle it out of the way.
Yeah.
Sure. Shuffle it out of the way. So there's the Iowa State University, of all places, Iowa State University, in one of their classes. Here was the assignment. It's the International Studies. So these students had to write a paper that gives a historical account of 9/11 from the perspective of the terrorist network.
Oh, good. There's some good, delicious instruction to come out of that one.
I so wanted to surprise Shaun with this, but I literally have two other parts to this segment. So yes, your tax dollars fund a university that gave an assignment to write a paper about the historical account of 9/11 from the perspective of the terrorist network.
I can look at this two different ways. I'm actually going to be a little bit more
Hippie.
not
Okay,
reactive.
go. Really? This
here-
is so not fun, BZ.
And here's why. Now, if the crux of the whole thing is based in the sympathy portion of it, right?
You don't know.
Right. But if you're going after the historical facts, and they're writing it as to try to learn what was the mindset of these monsters, so maybe we can use that education to avoid it in the future. Mm-hmm. That part I can be a little bit more understanding.
Well, here, let me quote the assignment.
Well, then this might change everything.
In other words, how might Al-Qaeda or a non-Western historian describe what happened?
Son of a bitch. And tax funding that school.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things.
Again, there's lessons to be learned from that, right?
Absolutely. You could take that whole incident and really educate people as to why they attack.
Sure.
The excuses that they make as their reason to attack, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But you're still putting pen to paper and forcing a student. If it's their personal beliefs, that's one thing. But you're forcing a student to write greatest victory against the white devil.
Right.
Or
that's a problem.
that's the problem.
I do have a problem.
Do you think an assignment would have flown in 1950 saying, talk about the attack on Pearl Harbor from the perspective of the Japanese and how might their newspaper report the incident?
And I have a complete horrific issue with that. Right? Because now you're doing the emotional portion of it.
Right.
You're not doing the literal portion. You're not trying to dissect what was in a criminal's mind,
Right.
and a terrorist's mind.
Right.
If that was the case, I would be okay with
If
that.
they were like, hey,
What
describe the events
class
of
was this here?
9/11,
Was this a history?
international studies. If they said,
What the fuck is that?
right. If they said, dissect 9/11 from whatever perspective or point of view you have and support your argument, I would be okay with
See,
that.
now that's sufficiently generic that you can include a million things.
Yes.
And you're not so focused
Yes.
on just the concern of
One side or the other.
Was I doing
Exactly.
a rerun dance?
Or, no, yes, you were. You were doing a rerun. I said, have you ever seen, way to get us off topic.
Sorry, guys.
So I actually said, those of you may not know who rerun is, and I explain it, because I said, Shaun can dance. Most people don't realize this, but Shaun can move. And he looks a lot like, have you ever seen What's Happening?
I don't even know.
And the character Rerun. Check out YouTube and check out Rerun's dance, and that's how Shaun moves. And I actually gave you major props. So now you're
did.
making me digress. Somebody
He
must
did.
have got you in the chat room.
yeah. I said,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Did anybody look up a Rerun dance to actually see what it was?
Oh.
see, White Mamba said, I'm still getting over Sean's tutu-wearing groin pole and rerun dance
That's all I saw
visual
out of my peripheral. is
visual
signs
from
and
last
stuff.
week. So, yes, that's where the comment came. there,
Thank
Clint.
you. Thank you. So colleges should teach students how to think, not what to think.
I agree.
And so having a paper so narrow in focus and telling students the perspective they shall write from, I have major issue with, particularly about the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil, and what a tremendous shock it was for our country.
Yes.
And I mean, still, those of us that were working that day, happening that day, wherever we needed to
However you
be.
wanna put it.
Try asking for that paper on September 12th
Yeah.
and see how that plays.
Well, and
Yeah.
the other portion of it too is it's obviously based with a sympathetic view towards the terrorists, and I have an issue anytime you're trying to get people to sympathize with pure evil under the guise of education, I have serious issue with that. And I'm not saying don't understand the mindset. I'm not saying don't understand the motivation. You need to, right? To combat it in the future, to fight against that. You need to understand all of those things, but not the sympathetic portion of it.
Yes.
That's the part that really chaps my ass.
Let me throw something out.
Unlike your assless.
And you tell me what you think.
It's fucked up.
September 11th, I have no doubt whatsoever that Building 1 and 2 went down. Mm-hmm. There are those people that think that didn't occur, that it was demo. Then there was the other building, the adjacent building that went down. Other people think that was demoed.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a question about the size of an airplane, like a 757, striking the Pentagon and making the hole that it did. Because I deal in evidence, I deal in facts. To me, that did not appear to be a 757 hole.
See,
that appeared to be something
I could argue once you
something with a fuselage and not wings. The reason I'm saying that is because the entryway that was made in buildings 1 and 2 by the aircraft are dissimilar to what we see in the Pentagon.
Yeah, but the Pentagon, you're also dealing with a brick and mortar.
All stone as opposed to glass.
And the wings
disintegrate.
I'm not saying that it didn't occur. Yeah. I'm just saying it's unusual that would have occurred in that fashion, visually.
I think that, so I can put it this way real quick, and I want to get on to the second segment. No, I'm sorry, but so glass in the World Trade Center towers, wings are going to penetrate that glass, go inside, and you're going to see that major opening.
Right.
In concrete structure, such as the Pentagon, you're not. So think of it in terms of a bullet and the jacket that strips. So if it goes through metal or some thicker metal, you can have a wide hole on one end, but you still have that other point on the other side where that round goes through. That's thinner. It looks smaller. So you can have a 40 cal round that looks like a 22 on the exit or something like that because of that jacket stripping and the speed and the velocity and everything, the energy in that transfer. So with that airplane in the Pentagon, those wings are not going to penetrate, particularly at that velocity. They're not going to penetrate that wall. They are going to disintegrate. They're going to separate, and you're going to have fuselage entry.
The Pentagon was built for warfare. It was built for defense.
Absolutely.
It was built against attacks.
Yep.
And you also have soft aluminum striking steel.
Yep.
On a horizontal basis versus the bullet analogy. So that was always my understanding on that. So
here's the other thing that
hold on, we gotta move.
We gotta move on. I got two other things here.
We can do a whole conspiracy theory show one night if you want.
So the next one is, here is why tax dollars should not fund public schools, particularly kindergarten.
Oh God, why?
Oh, here we come.
Yeah, this is going to get ugly.
Caitlin Miller and several classmates were playing at McLaughlin Elementary School, but it's spelled wrong, Shaun. It's spelled McLauchlin. McLaughlin. I don't know. Very British.
Versus McLaughlin.
In North Carolina. One girl was pretending to be a queen, the other was pretending to be a princess, and this 5-year-old little girl, Caitlin, was the protector. And in order to protect the princess and the queen, she picked up a stick that resembled a gun. And after she did that, she was hauled off by the authorities, the school administrators, and she was suspended.
This is the most ridiculous.
Well, that's logical.
Goddamn thing. And I've told the story ad nauseum.
So here's the quote from the school district. It's going to get better. She was suspended for, quote, turning a stick into a gun and threatening to shoot and kill other students.
She has the power to warp space and time and the very fabric of molecules. That's how dangerous that child is. They said she turned it into a gun.
This is my
She's extremely dangerous.
With these friggin' lunatics who are
turning a stick into a gun.
These rules. And this is what, first and foremost, as part of being a child, aren't you encouraged to develop imagination and that you can use later in life to maybe make the next great thing, right? Imagination play is huge as a young person.
Did every single one of us play war and cops and robbers, and hang on, I'm going to say it, cowboys and Indians
Oh, you're going to PC
on
now.
school grounds?
Here's the problem.
Every single one of us.
The problem is we won't let children be kids anymore.
Yeah.
One of the first things when they have the ability to understand language, some of the first things we do, as well, other people do because I don't have kids, is helicopter the children, and
Yeah.
they protect them, and they tell them how deadly and terrible the world is.
Mm-hmm.
You can be killed, you can be kidnapped. You can't do that. You must wear a helmet. Don't go outside. How could you live as a child in that kind of a world?
Well, because
that wasn't my
It
world.
goes back to 1984, right? We keep making that reference on the show. It's this thing to make children completely complicit, follow all the standardization rules all the time, not to have any sort of expressive ability, not to use any sort of imagination, right? Because let's face it, once you start having an imagination, you might try to think outside the box and break away at some point.
You're taking parenting away from the parents. And it kind of
Absolutely.
dovetails into what we were talking about with Pam's
SB
bill.
18.
SB 18.
I agree. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And the simple fact that, listen, schools are getting away from recess, schools are getting away from any sort of competition. Now you have everything. Remember the kid a couple years
Kids
ago?
go outside and walk.
But you remember, walk in circles.
You can't play tag.
You can't
play tag.
You can't play dodgeball.
You can't have
You
balls.
can't play smear the queer.
Oh, Red Rover, Red Rover.
What kind of schools doesn't play smear the queer?
That's such a West Coast thing. We didn't play that.
Queer meaning the different person because he or she had the ball, not queer because,
Right.
that person has sex. You don't know what that is at 7 years old.
I
But
agree.
now they expect you to, and they want you to.
But do you remember a couple years ago, you had the kid who ate the Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun? And was
Yes.
suspended for 5
Yes.
days?
Yes.
This is, there's no end to the liberal insanity. There's no end to saying, hey, they're just having fun. Oh, no, that's damaging. That is destructive, murderous behavior. No, they're friggin' 5 years old. They're
Yeah,
having fun.
they're having fun.
And they're learning to protect somebody who needs protection against others. That's not a bad quality to instill people.
Right. So this 5-year-old, she's protecting the royals or the government. So what? Secret Service agents are horrible?
Right. Terrible
Cops
people.
are bad?
Terrible
Cops are
people.
bad because they have guns?
Right.
FBI, well, that's a bad example. But,
I watched Patriots Day last
yeah.
night. Don't get me going on
did
that.
you? Oh, the FBI, they saved the day. What's the problem? I'm sure they saved the day.
Did you
right?
see it? Did you rent it? Mm-hmm. You didn't see it at the movies, though, I think. I wish you'd seen it at the movies. That was one of the best movies of 2000. Wasn't it released in January?
Last year.
Or last year?
No,
Last
it was
year.
17.
Was it
Was it?
17?
17, yeah.
It was one of the best movies I'd seen in 17.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
So they actually didn't make cops look like a-holes?
Not
Oh, hell no. Listen.
Really?
One of the biggest things that I learned about that movie is I had no idea, none, how violent the end of that was.
Yes.
I had no idea that was occurring because, everybody on the East Coast probably does. I no more had the idea that those cops went under such fire.
Yeah.
Explosions?
And if we're talking about the Boston Marathon.
It's like
The apprehension phase of
that was a war zone.
Yeah.
It was a war zone, and I'm fortunate in some way that I have friends that were actually there. Not for the specific gunfight, but for the search afterwards. But they saw the crime scene. They saw the amount of damage.
I literally had no idea.
This is why. Look, see that movie, and then come and give me a straight-faced argument why our cops shouldn't be militarized to some degree.
Right.
Not that they need to do that all the time among the citizenry, but they do have to be trained to a certain level and equipped, folks.
Yeah.
Because when that happens in your town, law enforcement is going to be the ones to respond to that and stop it. Not the United States military or the National Guard.
There's a great scene at the beginning of the Watertown shooting where the 2 Watertown police officers are pinned behind the fence.
Mm-hmm.
They're having large explosives, pipe bombs lobbed at them, and they're running low on ammo and engaged in a gunfight with these 2 guys. And literally, and what people don't know is, even though Mark Wahlberg's character was developed for the movie,
It was a composite, I was told.
everything else was factual.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Wahlberg was a composite of a bunch of the officers that he spoke to that worked that whole event. And this is a true story, as they're behind that fence, literally one of the Watertown residents comes out with a short sledgehammer and throws it at the cop and says, "Grab him one for me, or hit him once for me, Sarge." That's how angry those people were. That's how petrified those people were. And they knew what it was.
And if guns were allowed to be had, they'd have thrown the cops a gun.
Right. Right.
Remember the West Hollywood shootout here in California?
yes.
The cops were out. This is the reason cops have rifles in their patrol cars.
Yep.
Particularly the state agency, the California Highway
Right,
Patrol.
North Hollywood shootout.
North Hollywood shootout.
Natasha Renu and Phillips, those two guys,
Yep.
went to a nearby gun store, and the gun owner handed out long guns.
Yep. And guess what, folks? It was the shootout from the movie Heat.
Yep.
It was the shootout from the movie Heat. So look,
They said, by the way, that's where they got their inspiration.
Yeah.
I believe it. Yeah, Hollywood's evil. So the next blame Hollywood.
Love it.
The final story I have is here is why Americans are badass.
With it.
So in Oklahoma, 3 burglars try and break into a house.
Oh, this is a story with a happy ending.
This is a happy ending.
And
They had
I did this last night.
3 robbers attempted to break into a house. The homeowner's son comes out with a evil AR-15 style weapon and dumped all 3 of them. Because AR-15s could never be defensive. You would never use an AR-15 for home defense. Which jackass said that? Do you guys remember in Congress?
One of them, I forget what
Yeah.
Democrat retards.
Well, guess what?
I think that was Feinstein.
This guy came out with an AR-15 and
Put all 3
dumped
down.
all 3.
It's amazing when you have the right tool in the right person's hand, how effective it can be and what can it be effective for.
Yep.
Hey, listen.
They came in through the back door,
Mm-hmm.
which was glass. They attempted to rob it. 19-year-old came out with an AR. They exchanged some words. 2 of the 3 suspects died. Third
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
third was found in the driveway.
And listen, if you're looking strictly from a ballistic standpoint and from a tactical standpoint, what would you rather have? The ability to be on target at 75, 100 yards at the drop of a hat, or having to wait for that person to be in 10 and 15 yards of you?
So wait, yeah, would you rather take a primary weapon system into a gunfight or a secondary weapon system into a gunfight?
Exactly.
A defensive only a pistol platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Against bad guys that do have AKs and other
and
things.
anything else, and even a knife.
And even a knife
at that point.
Yep. Why do that when you can and rifles are more accurate than handguns.
Right.
So talk about limiting the exposure of innocent people getting hit.
And depending on what your usage for it, you can buy a litany of rounds. They have the frangible rounds. If you want to use it for home defense and you have kids that are 2 rooms away, you can't have it risk going through the wall, this, that, and the other thing. There's so many different options that you have that would be much more. It is. Anyone who says that weapon is evil just based on the fact that it's a weapon that looks scary
It's a
has
scary weapon.
Frigging clue.
I'm telling you, that is a major basis by which most leftists
I agree.
examine and evaluate a long gun.
But that's
Absolutely.
like me walking
By
up and
appearance.
saying that airplanes should never fly, therefore we should ban them.
Helicopters should never fly.
Because I look at them and say, "There's no way that thing should be up in the air."
Imagine.
I'm not educated.
Imagine if we were supposed to fly. Could you imagine how God would design birds?
Oh yeah.
Helicopters are completely against nature.
Right.
Birds would look totally screwed up.
Yeah.
So are
They
bumblebees.
shouldn't exist.
Yeah, bumblebees as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that, but the reality of the situation is when you're trying to throw a scare into people versus let them, and they throw scares into people to keep them from finding the actual facts. That's the other thing is they present it like they're giving facts up front and doing the work for you.
Yeah.
And what's most important is this young man in Oklahoma, was it?
Yeah. 19 years old.
I absolutely commend you, sir.
Absolutely.
You protected your homestead
And your family.
and your family against a potential assault, and you did so with a swift
Style.
justice,
I mean, an AR.
swift justice, and extreme prejudice. And I will take.
No, not prejudice because we don't know what race they were. I don't want to paint the kid into that corner. You know, we went all week last week, Sean, without any kind of racial,
Yeah,
without
don't-
any kind of
don't
racial
think Ken
slurs or
McClinton
anything.
wasn't appreciative
He was
of it. He
very
told me.
appreciative of that. And
up
now
against the break
here you
here,
go. No,
Jackassery
hang on, I got one
Media
more
Show.
thing. I got one more thing.
We're up against the break.
No, our badass president. Can you believe he freaking handed Merkel a bill for $374 billion?
That was. Did you also notice that was not covered?
Yes, I did.
No one said anything about that.
I also want to comment on, I believe it was the Italian president said about Merkel. Did you hear about that too? Oh, I got to find this at break. We'll talk about it real quick on the other side here on the Sackheads Radio Show. Would help if I hit a commercial.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Shaun.
Dude, I'm not saying half of this stupid program.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
To the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the Sackheads Radio Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the...
You done? You done? You done?
You done?
Hey, put your headphones on. I know you don't like to be professional, but put your headphones on for a minute.
He won. That's it.
Easy that way.
I got this just for you.
That's Shaun's theme song.
If I play it any longer, we'll get sued. So,
and you'll start dancing.
It's always the way, right? I even have my ballet shoes with me. Oh, man. What are we at? Where are we at?
Nunez v. Everyone. That's your segment. It's in green.
Why is it in green? I can't.
Because that's your segment.
Nunez v. Everybody. This was strange. So the Intelligence Committee working on the potential Russian tapping, phone tapping, Obama tapping, Trump tapping. No, not his wife. Sorry. That.
Oh, maybe.
Well, but that's not for me to know, right?
Right.
I mean, that's.
I would hope so. I mean.
Oh man. So apparently they gain enough intelligence where they decide, hey, we have evidence that maybe, incidentally, the Trump towers may have been wiretapped a little bit. But it had nothing to do with Trump. It had to do with the fact that the people that were there may have been being monitored, and it was incidental and accidental.
But it's still concerning.
But it's still very concerning. So then he brought it to the press. Immediately had a press conference before it was released to the president, before it was disseminated against other agencies that maybe should have got it. And I was back and forth on
Actually, he went to Trump first.
Well, I was given the timeline as it came out.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because the timeline as it came out is he held the press conference first. Nobody knows that he had previously discussed
And met with an individual.
I was curious about the timing of the press conference. And I almost wonder if it wasn't to get it out and make it public before the information, maybe, I don't know, disappeared somewhere.
Clamped, yes.
And that was my first thought on that is, hey, you make this as public as possible, and all of a sudden it can't go away. Now, could you argue that maybe he was a little quick to disseminate some other things? I don't have, and we don't have the full information that he has, but for some reason he may believe that it would be vital. So, of course, the Democrats went insane.
Well, it was interesting, Evelyn Farkas today, or was it today or yesterday, where she came out on MSNBC, and she was on the air, and this is a quote. I was urging my former colleagues and, frankly speaking, the people on the Hill. It was more actually aimed at telling the Hill people, get as much information as you can. Get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration. Because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear with the senior people who left. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we'd no longer have access to that intelligence. That's Evelyn Farkas, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under Obama, on MSNBC. Basically acknowledging that they were attempting to gather intel on Trump.
To me, that's what that's telling.
That's exactly what that's telling.
And yet, still, with that having been said, is CNN exploding that all over the internet? A, no, they're not.
No, the MSNBC.
B, or MSNBC.
Yeah.
And, well, hell, it should have been on CNBC. It should have been on NBC because they're all controlled by one and the same. And did you see that Trump just displayed all over the place? No, you did not.
I love Shaun's face as I was reading that.
They didn't anticipate that she was going to say that.
Of course
so
not.
Now it's time to bury the lead.
And people are still firing up on Nunez. Sorry, Shaun, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to catch everybody up.
Nunez, hell, they're still saying that there's a major connection with Trump and Russia.
Right.
Although Spicer's comment today,
I did not see.
Oh my gosh. He said, basically, he says something to the effect of, enough already, are you kidding me? Like if Trump put Russian salad dressing on his salad.
I did see that.
Yeah.
I did see that.
And then he was like, don't shake your head at me.
Right. No, but that's the problem.
If he used Russian dressing on his dress, you'd say there was a connection.
And the left and mainstream media is getting their comeuppance with all of this of, hey, you're not dictating this anymore. Now, do I absolutely understand that as the press secretary, he's of course going to do everything he can to defend the boss. And nobody
he has to.
Nobody had a problem with that with Josh Earnest.
I was going to say, that's Josh Earnest's job. And he did. He was a good soldier.
Right.
I have to hand it to Josh Earnest. He did his job.
I don't like Josh Earnest.
No.
I didn't like what he did.
But he carried out his job.
His job is not protecting the president. His job is answering and communicating with the American people.
You can argue what it should be and what it's become. I agree with that. But you also look at some of the things that Josh Earnest knowingly went out there and spoke about that we have since proven overtly was a lie. Starting with Fast and the Furious for the next 8 years, right? But then you have the mainstream media trying to push this ridiculous lie and false connection that nobody can prove. People can pretty much disprove it regularly. And they won't drop that, but they won't acknowledge the fact that Obama may have had, or the Obama administration may have had, the president-elect under surveillance. So much so that anytime you bring that up, people are trying to laugh you out of the room.
Yep.
And then go back to Russia. Go ahead, BZ.
But here's the two fallacies that people are trying to turn into Armageddon. Number one, in that tweet on, I think it was a Sunday, Trump specifically said Obama wiretapped. Well, everyone knows Obama didn't go into a computer and do that.
We know that.
What he did is I believe he had his administration do that and people under him. But just like they would hold Trump accountable, that's his regime, his administration, Mr. Obama is responsible for that. Number two, he got his terms mixed up. He said wiretapped. He'd probably have been better served by saying surveilled.
Spied on.
Right. Well, and this is the problem. Right.
But fundamentally,
it's a wiretap.
He's correct.
Right. In general speak, he actually, it's wiretapping, right? He said it in a language that most people understand. If you said electronic audio surveillance system or any sort of other...
or spied on. I was spied on.
Right. And yeah, in 100, he should stop dicking around with 140 characters. And I agree with that. I would much rather he start a blog and type this stuff out all the way.
Right.
Because what happens is I think in his effort to try to relay information, he's creating things that are easily spun against him. And it's not with malice. It is just... he's trying to communicate with people directly.
People are taking him literally,
right?
Instead of Obama. Well, what he meant was, they're not doing that with Trump. What they're saying is, no, what he said was...
Well, and you know, too, with all of Obama's tweeting, none of it was him tweeting it. That's the difference. And that's the difference between this president and Obama, social media-wise.
Yes.
You know this is coming from the president. When people read that, whether you like it or dislike what he's saying, you know it's coming from the person. He's actually connecting or attempting to connect to everybody.
Yeah.
That says a lot. It may not be the most perfect approach, but it says a lot.
Well, see, here's the difference. When I was working a case with the federal people, let's just say, air quotes, the feds, I could get the technology has changed markedly since then. I could ask for a pen register, which would give me information about the telephone numbers that people I'm interested in are using. And from there, I could go search databases, etc., and discover to whom is that phone number linked. And then the investigation expands from there. Yes.
Spiderweb.
And that's what's a logical investigation. That's how it's conducted. Or I could do what they call, I could conduct or ask for a title back then. It was a Title III wiretap, and it was literally a wiretap of a very specific phone number. But back then, that included guys sitting in vans with a reel-to-reel tape recorder and listening to wiretaps, and you could listen for a while, you couldn't continue listening, and you had to turn the machine off. That's how silly and stupid, and that's how limited I was in listening to other people's phones. And you had to do a serious tap dance to get a Title III wiretap.
Because there was an expectation of privacy.
Yes, there was.
And there was also...
it was a search.
And
yes.
Also, the weight of the investigation fell on the government to prove need versus just because.
Right. Because, let's face it, it's a search.
And here's the other thing. When I wanted to arrest someone... In the federal government, you don't work in the concept. The feds don't have a concept of fresh arrest.
The feds don't have a concept.
You don't do
mostly.
You mostly don't do anything in terms of a fresh arrest. You go to your USA and you get a warrant,
or you go to grand jury and you get an indictment,
or that way, depending on what kind of a case you've got. But I was expected, and as a detective for local agencies, I was expected if I wanted to arrest somebody, I'd either do a fresh arrest or I'd have to go get a warrant. If I wanted to search for property, I had to go get a warrant. We have technology. Yes, we have the ability. Don't tell me that the NSA isn't vacuuming everything.
Right.
Everything.
And I think that's really what the Dems are trying to protect with this, right? So you start looking at the scope of the whole Trump tapping, if you want to call it that, right? Everyone's like, oh, they're trying to downplay it. Because if it comes out that it was done in a giant NSA sweep under the Obama administration and that it just happened to get it, and that's how they got in through it, that it was already actively sweeping.
But even
And
so,
there was
U.S.
no-
citizens are not supposed to be identified.
That's correct.
Right.
So that's the other issue here.
So that's where they go into panic mode. If that was what was still going on after, 4 years after we were told it was not going on?
DNI James Clapper
Yes.
specifically said that and lied to the American people
Yes.
before Congress.
And that's the
I'm
other
sure he'll be
side.
hauled in for perjury.
That's the other side. That's the other side of the protection there, right? Is all of a sudden it
If
brings
Sessions
the NSA
has any
back
balls,
up.
he will.
It brings up the NSA yet
that brings
again
up
with the
another-
Obama administration, and you start looking at legal ramifications for members of the Obama administration. So there's a lot of things that specific tapping or spying could open a Pandora's box, and I think again that's why Nunez was so quick to get it to the press.
Well, because I think you're absolutely right. He was concerned that it was going to disappear. And now, of course, Pelosi and Schumer have called for the removal by Speaker Paul Ryan, because he's the only one who can do it, removing Devin Nunez from his chairmanship on the House Intelligence Committee. That's not going to happen. Paul Ryan has already said.
It better not happen.
That's not going to happen. And he has said that publicly. So kudos on Ryan for saying that.
Well, Paul Ryan has no choice but to say that, because after the healthcare debacle, he's struggling to keep his job.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another interesting little tidbit that I'm going to throw out into the mix. Remember when Judge Andrew Napolitano said, here's what actually occurred. I received it on good information from 3 separate sources, which is far and above what most news agencies need these days. They only give a shit about having one source, and they don't back it up. Judge Napolitano said he had information from 3 separate sources that GCHQ from the UK was actually doing this. They'd been requested to do that and sent the information back. Therefore, they didn't even have to go to a FISA court. They had our good friends do that.
Well,
he gets removed from Fox News for doing that. Guess what? Today, he's back.
Right. And it's amazing to me.
Amazing, right?
That people have no understanding of the fact that I guarantee you it's happened before, right? Hey, our Constitution blocks us from doing it, but there's nothing I can really do if you do it. So do you mind helping us out? And then
Well,
giving us the
that's the
information?
same thing for rendition. When you do that on the high seas, you know, this stuff is conducted. People know it.
Right.
You do a favor for another country over here, the country it's tit for tat. I expect that. I
Especially if
perfectly
the person
understand
in
that.
Power in the country at that time was not a fan of the person being investigated. Right? So you had that personal conflict. Well, you just had Brexit. You had Cameron Brown, who was on the way out. Trump was a major supporter of Brexit. All these different things.
Wait a second. So what you guys are saying is that a foreign government was spying and conducting operations on U.S. soil against our president-elect?
Potentially, yes.
That's problematic.
That's seriously problematic.
Don't they realize we kicked their ass twice already?
Remember Yorktown?
And saved them twice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, here's the big issue. The big issue is the
basically 4-0.
The information is.
Sorry.
It's okay. The information is there to acquire. It's always there. It's a matter of accessing it. Who gets to access it? For what reason is it accessed? And then what do you do with it? So this information comes through a limited number of persons, only to discover that it isn't just a limited number of persons.
It's sweeping.
Who have the ability to unmask people like that. Just in the FBI, Comey revealed that there are 20 individuals that have the ability, just in the FBI, to unmask the names of individuals. There are 17 agencies in the intelligence community. Some people are saying in the NSA it's up to 50 to 100 people who have the ability. Now multiply that times 17, and there's your pool of suspects. But see, this was done
Or we could just
purposely.
declare war against England for spying on our president-elect. What?
Well, but what you could do is whoever in Britain okayed it and allowed it, if proven,
assassinate him.
It's one way to go about
I
it.
don't advocate that. That is not the view of SHR Media, Second's Radio Show, or me.
You were just discussing potential.
I was discussing
options, right?
potential options in like a movie
But
scenario.
can you imagine if we issued a search warrant or an arrest warrant for that person and actually brought them to justice here? And what that would do about international spying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That would be a humongous issue, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, you have more than enough justification to go in, and I've heard it said, oh, this is so terribly difficult to do, you have to prove cause. I believe there's more than enough cause to rip James Comey out of his corner fourth floor glass-walled office and kick him to the streets, kick him to the curb.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But they are afraid of doing that. He needs to be gone.
Yeah.
He is the person that's not cooperating right now with they were going to have hearings Tuesday. He said, no, I can't make it. The NSA is being cooperative. James Comey is not being quite so cooperative. There are reasons for things as they occur.
You
One of the
can't
first
make it?
things to me,
Here's
because
a subpoena.
I'm
Get your ass in here.
I'm a suspicious son of a bitch. One of my first things I thought when I heard that is, well, I wonder where the leaker lives.
Well, I'll tell you right now. I think Comey,
What if it's him?
I think Comey was
In his building.
I think
What if it's him?
Comey was left there for a reason, and I've thought about this long and hard. I think Comey was left there so they can actually find out how he operates, allow him to keep using his government computer, which can be monitored at any time, for open communication. And I think they're kind of giving him enough rope to hang himself.
What if Comey is the leak?
Right. That's what I mean.
That's possible.
Right. You need to look at all that. So I think that was a very strategic move to leave Comey in because, listen, I mean, who's his boss right now, right? Pete Sessions. He can have some influence when needed.
And see, here's the corollary of it all. Many of the cabinet, well, all the cabinet's been installed now, that's fine, but the secondary individuals have mostly been stymied. So they're missing important primary sources of their staffs in order to do the coordination and make sure that everyone is focused on the same page.
Right.
So there's much chaos in all of the cabinet positions because they still are unable to staff all of these and secondary positions.
Yep, because of the Democrats.
And that's, again, that is purposeful. There's a reason that Barack Hussein Obama, 2 weeks before he left, wrote EO 12333, which said that now much more information can get shared between all the alphabet agencies. The first question you have to ask is, why that? Why then? Why now? Why 2 weeks before he goes away? To me, that is screaming. He knew this shit was coming. He was planting this. There were mines. And he implanted all sorts of mines in there. And he's got people still working in those organizations whose allegiance is to him and the Democrats.
Yep.
I agree wholeheartedly.
It's completely... There's no incidental about any of this shit.
Nope.
Nothing incidental at all.
I've said that from the beginning. I don't believe in
Incidental, that's a weasel word.
Well, and it's funny, too, how initially Democrats said that anything that was done must have went through the FISA court. They didn't say it did, but must have. The assumption was. No. Right.
Listen, it's digital.
Yes.
Anything can go anywhere. You don't need a court to pick up things. All you need to do is find a good channel, a semi-reliable channel in which to make sure that it leaks. It goes to the right people. It goes to the New York Times.
Yep.
It goes to the Wall Street Journal, and then the information goes out because
you only need one or two spots.
They full well know that you cannot prosecute these people. Now you can prosecute the people that leak the information, but the end user, you can't go after them.
No. You have to go through where the sources
This is
are.
all done with great animus, purposely.
So what happens with Nunez, right? Because Nunez is the one that's really kind of like, yeah, Trump's actually not some just paranoid, crazy old guy. This kind of stuff was happening.
Nunez is holding his mud, though.
Yeah.
And we already know that Ryan's not going to get rid of him. And the only reason they're saying that they have no confidence in him, particularly Adam Schiff, is because it's a game of testosterone and balls. What I mean by that is Schiff is pissed off because he and his side of the aisle, because he's the highest-ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, he's pissed because he wasn't told first. Therefore, the Democrats didn't have access to that information.
Sorry, he's not the ranking member.
And the other
He's
thing
not the
is,
chairman.
Trey Gowdy said Devin Nunez did exactly what he should have done.
Yes.
He went to the President of the United States, and all the rest of it is extraneous bullshit. Devin Nunez did his job.
Yep. The President of the United States has jurisdiction in this area.
Yeah.
The President does. National security. What does that fall under?
President, executive branch.
Yeah.
They're trying to hoist him on the petard of politics, and it's not working, but they're not going to stop. Just today, I heard more Democrats continue the bleat, Russia, 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 Russia. This is such...
So is this going to hurt or help the Democrats in the election cycle that's going to start up here in about 6 months?
That's the big problem. There are still unnamed Democrats who have not weighed in on Gorsuch, and the reason is 2018.
Yes.
And the ones that are in question, the ones that are on the fence, are the Democrats.
No, you can take them
in mostly right-leaning areas.
Yes.
They're being challenged. Those are the people that are not assigning a particular vote, saying specifically, I'm not going to vote for Neil Gorsuch.
I think Gorsuch is going to get through with overwhelming support at the 0 hour.
And he should.
Yes.
Because if the Democrats waste a filibuster on him, and I think we were talking about this last week.
Nuclear in number 2.
If you have to go nuclear on number 1, nobody is going to blink at doing it with number 2.
Right. Because it's already been done. They've already set the standard.
Yep. So if you do it now on a judge where how do the Democrats look on a judge who is stellar?
Yes.
Passed damn near.
They all
voted,
blessed him in 2006.
Yes. And
every one of them.
The man, there's nothing negative about the man.
Right. There
nothing.
is nothing.
So if they waste this and they wage war on him, yeah, stand by. That's a loser on an election.
Gird your loins, because there's information to indicate that there may very well be another vacancy in SCOTUS sometime this summer.
Yeah.
Now, one they're going to fight for. Can you imagine the assholes and elbows and camshafts that are going to be thrown when the Democrats discover, oh my God, we've just replaced another right-leaning SCOTUS member to replace Scalia.
Yep.
Now they're going to have the ability under President Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head. Now what do? Now SCOTUS really is thrown. Plus,
they're going to filibuster until the next presidential election.
But wait, there's more. This is just year 1 of Trump.
Yes.
After we have 2 SCOTUS vacancies, from now until the end of the next 4 years, there's going to be another opening.
If you get
guaranteed.
If you get 2 before summer or before the end of summer,
it's a lock. If you get 3,
to get 3,
holy
in 4 years, you're
crap.
guaranteed the 3rd, right? Because you look at, and it might be Kennedy,
but here's the thing:
but anyone could go at any time.
So would Trump put a moderate in, or would he put a real conservative?
There was a movement. I was speaking on the Ken McClinton show on Monday. There's a movement that's starting in D.C. which says, this is for fundamental fairness. For fundamental fairness, here's what Trump should do. He should put in Merrick Garland as number 2. That would be fair.
Nope. F you guys.
That's the movement.
That's not fair. And you know what? Fair is a dirty 4-letter word when the reality is you put in somebody who's most qualified.
Everybody doesn't get a trophy.
Yep, you put in somebody who is most qualified to be in that seat. Despite personal politics, you do it, much like Gorsuch, based on how they adjudicate, their education, their knowledge, and their experience. That's the person you choose. And if that person comes from a conservative background, okay.
Here's what you need to do before we hit the break.
If they come from a liberal background, they're obviously not intelligent or well-read on the Constitution.
Trump made an excellent nomination with Gorsuch.
Yeah.
Trump runs on praise and credits. Someone in the background needs to take Trump aside and do nothing but give him kudos and accolades for having nominated Gorsuch.
Right.
Because that'll keep him along that particular line. Because trust me, within the White House, there are people that are really trying to pull him left.
Well, we'll see what happens. We're up against a break. When we come back, it's BZ. What topic do you have? I can't see.
He has Welp. GOP fucked that up.
Oh yeah. Talk a little.
Well, that's a never-ending topic.
On the Sackheads Radio Show live in the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Shaun from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Shaun.
Dude, I'm not saying capitalist.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking, drinking, drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Shaun, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us.
Did you notice how quiet I was?
I know, for once.
I learned, I am trainable.
You're starting to get it, which, considering your age.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show. What?
Wasn't me that time.
I don't even know. You know what? Just go with your subject. Yeah.
Just leave me out of it.
I can't even look at his stupid face sometimes.
Do we have cameras up in the studio? Because I want to show everybody the hat I'm wearing.
No.
That says infidel.
Yes, it does. What? You ever walk into a 7-Eleven wearing a hat like this? Because I have.
What's wrong with that?
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say if you ever walked into a 7-Eleven wearing a hat that says infidel.
Are you trying to say that 7-Elevens are run by Middle Easterners?
And then it says underneath it says infidel in
Sanskrit.
It does.
Well, we're all infidels, aren't we? I mean, technically.
Right. I'm just, look, I want to make it easy for them.
Based on their book, we're technically infidels. So,
Right.
You know, all you're doing is...
I'm just making it easy for them.
That would be like me wearing a hat that said fat white guy.
Right.
It's no different, really.
It's no, or like I love cheeseburgers.
I would love that.
I love cheeseburgers.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's wrong with a good cheeseburger?
There's nothing wrong with a good cheeseburger.
Let's not make it about the burgers. Relax, boys.
I'm just saying.
You just seemed a little snippy.
No, not at all. You clearly don't eat bison burgers.
Although there is a place on El Camino where you can get bison burgers, by the way.
Oh, there's a place in Woodland, too.
Is there?
Yeah. You can get a whole bunch of different types of
You can get ostrich.
Yes, you can get ostrich.
Ostrich is not bad.
Camel. There's a whole bunch.
Not much fat on it, though.
Can you eat camel toes? Do they serve camel toes there?
They had to stop
because I love
the health code violation.
I love.
They used to serve
camel
them in styrofoam, but now California is coming up with a bill where you can't have anything in styrofoam. So
Nothing
who
whatsoever.
knows how long it's going to be before they stop serving them like that.
God forbid you're allowed to hand out food. So let's get back to even worse news. BZ, your segment, take it away, baby.
Worst news, yes. Worst news, no. I think what I've learned throughout all of this is we need to be listening more and more to Rand Paul. One of the things that he said is, we did to, for lack of a better word, Trump care, the exact same thing that the Democrats did with the original Obamacare bill. They assembled it all together. They got it together rapidly. They shoved it through sort of in the middle of the night, and Rand Paul said, what was the compulsion? What was the major compelling reason to come up with this bill so rapidly?
Right.
In terms of getting it out there, we should have taken the time to look at it. We should have gotten more feedback and input from stakeholders in this thing, to include the American taxpayers. And as I was talking to Ken Monday night, one of the major critical elements of this thing wasn't even present. Well, number one, it creates a massive entitlement for everyone. Number two, because I had to ask Ken, and he told me, and I thought so, but that thing was exactly what everyone was asking for was not in that bill. It was not portable.
Right.
It wasn't, you couldn't be a librarian one day and then you're a welder the next day and you still got the same health care. That's what people want. And then you're living in California and the next day you move to Reno and you lose your health care.
Right.
It's yours. You're paying for it. Now, if you're not keeping up with your premiums, that's another story.
Totally different animal. Totally
but
different.
if you're dealing with it in that fashion, one of the major things, healthcare accounts.
Yes.
The ability to have it tax free.
Voucher system.
There are so many places that they could have gone with this and decided that they weren't going to do because, for whatever reason, they decided they had to ram it up the congressional ass immediately.
Well,
and here's the other thing that I said. And fie on the Republicans for doing this. From 2008, 2009, the GOP decided that they didn't like Obamacare at all. Can't think of the name of the guy who was laughing in these various conferences saying, boy, we pulled the wool over the American public on this.
He was the architect of it at the MIT speaking.
And I can't think of that guy's name. But he said what was true and said it in the light of day. And yet, knowing that, the Republicans had 8 years
to come up with a bill,
to come up with something they could design, and they didn't see. Number one, why didn't
they didn't think they were going to win?
That's it. Why didn't you think?
That's why they didn't think they were going to win.
Why didn't you think that there was a chance that you could be in power? And if all your words are, we got to repeal this, okay, then what's your suggestion to fill the vacuum? They had nothing.
Look at it realistically, too, in the sense of, hey, you always want to have that bill standing by so when it comes time to refute Obamacare to the best of your ability, even if it's only by speaking, you could present a better option than what is being utilized right now and say, this is why you should have elected us. We would have passed this and it would have been better. You should have been prepared and you were not. Also, one of the things that we dumped all over the Democrats 4 or 8 years ago was quite simply, hey, you had the majority, and this was the first thing that you dealt with. Now, I understand that the Obamacare is a bigger issue to the American people than it was 8 years ago. They made Obamacare a big issue, but it wasn't as big. Now it is a bigger issue. You should have taken more time to develop a far better plan.
It's a bigger issue now because the Republicans have been beating a drum, making it a bigger issue. And then they made it this huge issue because they kept beating this judge election after election after election. And now they got exactly what it is they wanted, and they have nothing. They have dick. And the reason they have it is because they didn't think they could win the presidency. They thought Hillary Clinton was a lock, and so they didn't even bother to have something because, why are we going to spend our time on that when it's not going to be signed in? We're just going to keep beating this drum.
That is what I call a complete failure. That is a failure of imagination. That's a failure of future. That's a failure of planning. That's an epic fail. F to the GOP.
Huge.
Massive F to the GOP.
It comes down to leadership. It comes down to Paul Ryan. And it comes down...
it comes down to Rance Priebus, because he should have been, when he was the chair of the GOP leading up to this election.
He was the ramrod.
Yes, he was.
So you have Paul Ryan, Reince Priebus, and John Boehner to some point, right? Because when all of this was starting, Boehner was in charge.
And Mitch McConnell.
That was under his umbrella as well.
Mitch McConnell.
They had the ability to do this and didn't. So then Trump said...
And the Freedom Caucus. They're not off the hook on this.
No, but I'm kind of behind the Freedom Caucus in a way.
I'm glad they did what they did.
It's
in the
good.
Sense of, I'm glad that they stood up for principles. I'm not glad the fact that they didn't have something ready to go.
That's the deal.
Yeah, but what principles? I mean, honestly, what principles? Because if their principle is freer market, access to health care, if those are their principles, why look at it? It wasn't the caucus as a whole, it was certain members. And you have one of them just say, fuck it then, I'm out. He's so fed up with them because you can't constantly say no.
Right.
Well,
you cannot.
No, you can't constantly say no, but you can continue to insist that the right elements are installed in the bill, to include what I consider to be the obvious element.
Portability.
Yes.
Health savings accounts.
And then why?
And you don't need this massive expansion.
Why do they not have their own bill ready to go?
That's the point. They had so long.
You know why? Because they didn't
I'm talking about the Freedom
win.
Caucus.
Right.
Listen,
because they didn't think they'd win.
Okay.
They didn't think either side, any element in the Republican Party, did not think they'd win. And as long as there was a Democrat in there, there's no way, no matter how many times they repeal Obamacare or vote to repeal Obamacare, any Democratic president would never sign it. So why would they spend the time, energy, or resources putting that bill together?
Well, Trump was thinking of two philosophies. One of them, depending on whether you want to go positive, pessimistic, or optimistic. One of the things that he had said is, all right, he got shot down. I spoke to all the people I possibly could to try to get them all on base. That didn't work very well. And so now, the Democrats, it's your baby to rock from now on. I'm out. I did whatever I could. Now Obamacare will stand or fall on the merits of itself. And so he was hands off, and he said, I'm done with it. Well, I knew, of course, that's not true. Now he said it can come back. And anyone that's a thinking human being knows that it will come back. It's got to. But I can understand he's pissed. He wants it to, if it didn't go his way, then he was going to take his toys and go home, but that still isn't doing anything for the American people. It's got to come back. So my recommendation is, from all the things that I'm hearing from Rand Paul, he's going the right direction. He's a medical individual, so I would assume that on his end he has much greater and more accurate insight as to what needs to be done with this particular bill. Let's start listening to people. Let's do it right. For fuck's sake, we've had 8 years. Now you can't take another 2 months, 3 months, whatever is necessary to craft something that would benefit people.
You have up to 2 years to get this passed, so you might as well. And you know, especially if you're trying to garner support in some way, time would have been their benefit to their benefit, because as Obamacare goes on, the worse it becomes. And I know there was two fears out there, right? There's legit fear that it will collapse upon itself before you have something else in place. And for people that don't understand, that is not like a year-to-year issue when the collapse might happen. You're down to months. There's months that if enough people pull out and the money's not coming in and the exchanges crash and the private sectors pull out, you're host.
Well, here's another extremely critical element, and I have to say that I am not an expert by any means on this bill. I'm just pulling out some random shards in my memory, whatever is left from Kettle One having done its serious damage over the years. But I remember the people who had individual accounts, they were decimated. And was it not true that after a number of years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the hell it was, then they were going to go after big accounts? In other words, if you belong to a large corporation or an agency, a government agency, something like that, now the focus was going to be on you. Now, I'm telling you, if you get people that are in large accounts working for major employees in a group, not individually, but as a group, if they find that their medical coverage is assassinated, you'll see an uprising.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. The Republicans own this.
Only one?
Because lots, right? Because the Democrats are going to wrap this around the Republicans.
Yep.
If Obamacare falls under its own weight, at this point, the Republican Party had an opportunity to repeal and to replace it. They failed to do that.
Thank you.
They failed to do that. So if Obamacare fails under its own weight,
which it could,
the Republicans cannot. Well, they can try to come back and say, "Oh, look, see, this is what happens. We knew it was going to fail." The Democrats are going to come back and say, "Hey, yeah, we'll give you that. You were right. You knew better than us, but you had an opportunity to fix it and save the American people, and you failed. Give us another chance to do it."
It's a failure of imagination. The Republicans, as per normal, hammered their asses into that corner.
Yep, and now they can't get out.
Look, they own this. If the Republicans cannot let Obamacare fail at this point before they're able to replace it. Mm-hmm. Because the Democrats are going to turn around and say, "Hey, they knew it was going to fail. Listen, let me play you back all their words. Oh, and they failed to get this done properly.
Right.
They let you down, not us."
Well, who owns the voice of the Democrats?
Well, but hold on.
The American media maggots.
Right.
They'll hammer that point.
You also have 4 years for them to distance themselves from Obama. You have 4 years for them to recreate their history, because if you know the voting populace in this country, it's month to month what their memory is and what it versus the reality. Right. I'm being very
You're being
kind.
generous.
You're being very generous.
So they have the ability to recreate themselves before the next election.
Yep.
And go from there. And with the election cycles essentially kicking off in another 6 or 7 months for the midterms, you need to have something in place prior. And the fact that you didn't take your time, the fact that you didn't have something planned.
What's the split coming up? Can the Republicans lose the House or the Senate coming up?
I think they can definitely lose the Senate.
Yeah, I think the Senate is too close.
Yeah.
Very, very close.
The House, it would take a major disaster to lose the House. Still possible. I mean, anything's possible, right?
Right.
But I think you have a big chance.
I would be more fair. Well, there's a guy that was a punk rocker in Texas who's challenging Ted Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas is moving from center to left.
Of course they are.
Ted Cruz may actually have a run for his money.
Here's the thing about Texas, and this is one of the biggest problems, what's the word I'm looking for? The side effect of pulling all the business from California to Texas and New York to Texas.
Yep.
You're importing liberals, and you're importing them.
Yes, you
by
are.
And large.
That's how you got Oregon. That's how you got Washington.
And exactly. And because when you're importing them in large masses to one specific area, they start on local politics, and then they start expanding out. That's the only real side effect of that is you get liberals where you don't want them.
That's why I call it fornicalia.
Right.
It fornicates everything with which it comes in contact.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another interesting point about Trump's book. One of the things that he says he predicates business deals on, it's like walking in to buy an automobile. Never let the car salesman see that you're desperate to have that car.
Yeah. You don't want your car to blow up in the parking lot.
Never let them, and that was from The Art of the Deal.
Yes.
The worst thing that you can possibly do in a deal is to seem desperate to make it.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they look like.
Is desperate.
To me.
Well, and simple things that they could put through one at a time and they just didn't do, which drives me absolutely crazy. You can work at crossing state lines and add that in. Hey, you know what? We pulled this restriction. This restriction's gone from Obamacare, and it will carry over into whatever the new plan is. You can dismantle some of the worst parts of Obamacare up front and do it piece by piece in an effort to bridge that gap, and then whatever you change, you can put into the new bill and keep it in place. I think selling across state lines is one of the biggest complaints that you can have, because not only can you
it makes no sense to not do that.
Right. And I go back to auto insurance, what was it, 15 years ago when you started to be able to sell auto insurance across state lines, and you had the Geicos and Esurance and all these other companies start popping up. It naturally does that. How does it naturally do that? Because that's how economy works.
Right, but it's the C word.
Right.
What they got out of that was the C word, and that's this, which is what you don't have in healthcare: competition.
Right. And it forces people. And if I'm in California and everything in the California exchange sucks, then I could go to, say, South Dakota and check their exchange.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a plan out there that my hospital and my doctor has to honor.
By doing that, that will drag the asses of the rest of those companies into line.
Yep.
Why, for example, has tuition in college skyrocketed?
Because they
at
teach classes
alarming
like
rates?
right 9/11 from the terrorist point of view.
No, wrong. Ding, ding, ding. It's because the federal government will pay all those colleges and universities, even if the students don't.
To teach classes
so
like
all the
9/11
universities
from the terrorist
and
perspective.
colleges know that they can charge any rate, and if the kids default, the federal government will still pick up in other words, the federal government pays everything. There is no competition.
Beasley, did you not listen to the first segment of the show? This is why our tax dollars should not go to universities.
Here's one of the other reasons,
that's
too,
very
that they don't want to allow that commerce, and the states are going to put up a fight on this, is if you're in California, you now have 30 healthcare companies that are setting up shop and paying taxes in California on a regular basis. If you allow crossing state lines, then states that tax the least on corporations are going to get all those companies relocating to that location in an effort to save money. And then you lose that out of states like California.
So, look, good. California needs to fail.
OFW, you got it.
I have some information because we were talking about the midterm elections. The Senate favors the Republicans big time this time around. The Republicans are only defending 8 seats. The Democrats are defending...
Okay, really?
Yes, the Democrats are defending 23 seats.
Okay.
Plus 2 independent seats that caucus Democrat. So the Democrats are defending 25 seats.
Oh, now that's
while the
interesting.
Republicans are only defending 8.
That's illuminating. Okay, I stand corrected.
And of the 10 that are most likely to flip, only 1 is a Republican, and that's Dean Heller out of Nevada. The other 9 are Democrats in states won big time by Trump, including Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, Joe Manchin in West Virginia.
I like that guy.
Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Heidi Heitkamp, North Dakota, John Tester, Montana. That one will probably flip. Claire McCaskill, Missouri, Joe Donnelly.
Claire McCaskill.
Those are the 9 Democrats that out of the 10 most likely states to flip. 9 are Democrat, 1 is Republican. The only likely Republican state to flip would be Nevada.
That's good news. I like that.
But the problem is that the Republicans need to identify that.
They have. Yeah, I'm sure they have.
But they need to actually work on it. Because now, listen, if you have potentially 25 seats coming up that you could get in the Senate and maintain the House, you've changed everything.
Look, you need to pick up 8 seats in the Senate. If you can pick up 8 of those, or 9 in case one of yours flips, if you can pick up a net of 18 seats, now you're filibuster proof.
Right. See, here's the deal. You have to do what I call the logical extension. Clint, you just made an excellent point. What if GOP, look on into the future. What if, GOP, you do, like you just said, Clint, they pick up 8 seats? And what if you get a second SCOTUS individual seated in 2017? And what if between now and 2020, if there is a third opening in SCOTUS, which you fill, and I think there's every reason to think that you'll have it, and that's almost unprecedented, then this thing is almost tamper-proof. And don't think the Democrats aren't thinking that exact same way, which is why they will fight tooth and nail to make sure that it doesn't happen. But this is an amazing opening for the GOP, and fuck them if they don't take advantage of it.
I agree. Look, and we talked about this even with the election coming up. This cycle, this 4 years, I'm even going to narrow that down to 2 years.
It's huge.
The reason Trump was so critical to get in there, whether you love him or hate him, if you're a Republican or a conservative, the reason it was so critical is because of SCOTUS. This is the exact reason here.
That's exactly what people that didn't like Trump, like me, said. I get assailed on my blog and in Twitter all the time from leftist fucks who say, blah, 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 Trump, blah, 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 blah. And my standard Mark 1 Model 1 response back is, number 1, Hillary's not president. Number 2, SCOTUS, go away.
Yeah. Look, and Trump's actually treating this like a job. We've said it before.
He's treating it like a business.
Love him or hate him, but he's taking it seriously and like a job.
With this caveat, remember I said that you can't be desperate when you go into a negotiation? He violated that. And the other thing that I think that he violated in his book is, if you don't deliver the goods, in other words, if you don't deliver what you say you're going to deliver, there's going to be a problem, and people will catch on.
And he didn't deliver health care.
And he didn't deliver health care.
Well, no.
And the Democrats and the American media maggots are taking advantage.
But you have a guy who thought he was going to win the election and a Congress who didn't, and they didn't prepare. Even though he told him...
But who owns it?
I know he owns it
He owns it.
I know he owns it to a point.
I'm talking in the minds of the American people. I don't blame Trump for its failure.
Okay.
But in the minds of the... I
just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
I think we were saying this...
He told them to get a bill ready. He told them he'd sign it.
Yes.
You can't argue what he said for a year.
No, but... in the minds of this, so I think we were saying the same thing. In the minds of
words,
in the minds of the American people, he owns it.
Yeah, I'm okay
here in this room. Fucking Congress owns it.
Congress owns
it. The
this.
Republicans own it.
And
the Freedom Caucus owns it.
The Republicans have been owning this in Congress for years because they had the ability in the House to go after the purse strings of Obamacare for 8 years, and they didn't fucking do it.
They didn't.
So they just continue to allow Obamacare to grow and fail, and they continue to fail their constituents. And if they don't turn it around, they're going to need a hell of a lot more than a midterm election to save their arse.
I know we're coming up to the break, and I hate to throw the proverbial turd in the punch bowl.
No, you don't. You love it. You love turd punch.
But speaking of turd punch, here's something that I'm going to introduce which will make all of what we've said in the past hour and a half immaterial. The budget. The debt clock.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Do we keep printing money? What will happen to the stock market? What will happen to the Federal Reserve? Can we keep on this course? Is it sustainable?
Well, you know the answer to that. Of course not.
So it's going to blow.
No, it is. Is Trump slowing it, or is Trump doing something to address it? I think because I think he realizes it. Absolutely.
Which is one of the reasons that he wants to cut in Trump's budget. I went over that in the show yesterday. There was 18 different agencies that he wants to cut. And he does want to cut fat from the government because, my God, it's even fatter than me. And that's saying something.
There's a lot of...
But they won't allow it!
I'm just going to say there's a lot of pork in both places. Is that safe?
I do like pork. Which is another reason I'll never be a Muslim.
Well, we're up against a break. When we come back, we're going to open forum. And you know what? Start right now in the chat room, throwing out suggestions. BZ's going to monitor it. I'm going to go outside and get fresh air. Clint's going to powder his nose.
Right.
Yep. We'll be back for that. Open forum right here on the Sackheads Radio Show after the break.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Millman. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant flying guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Shaun.
Dude, I'm not saying capitalist.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Saka as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media
Nice
Network.
one. Nice. Very nice.
I've been sitting here anticipating the return from break, staring at the microphone, drooling, ready to talk our open forum session. I have the first story
it's
I
a
want to
great
discuss
one.
out of open forum. And this, of course, was sent to me by my favorite little news ferret, El Duce himself.
El Duce.
Dan Butcher.
El Duce? Is that Spanish for the douche?
And it's going to be titled from the Daily Caller. Transgender people are now oppressed because pussy hats equate womanhood with having a vagina. Yes, we've all seen pussy hats, the pink knitted hats that look like a vagina. Wait, it gets better. Oh. The transgender people are essentially pissed because if you're wearing a pussy hat, you're kind of rubbing it in their face that they don't have one. So they think that it's...
What?
Men who dress up in women's clothing and insist that they are women are unfairly ostracized from modern American feminist movement because feminists are overly reproductive system focused, according to the op-ed in the Daily Emerald, an University of Oregon State newspaper. The author of the 790-word Germad, Taylor Griggs, trains her in... Free the Nipple campaigns, and especially the perky pink neon pussy power hats with which many participants in the January Women's March on Washington wore. This hat is supposed to represent among feminists the fact that they're women. It looks kind of vagina-like. It's not. It's just like a pink knit hat with like a triangle in the middle.
It's a pussy hat.
But they call it a pussy hat. Transgender people are mad because they're not being included into the feminist movement.
That is hilarious.
And the women in the feminist movement are shoving it essentially in their faces that they're not women by wearing these hats.
You know what? That is awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to hell.
That is amazing. Here's why.
Of insanity.
The left is so batshit crazy that even the feminists are like, wait, what? We're hateful? We're feminists. We can't be hateful. And men are bitching that they're not women, so they can't be feminists.
I have for you...
Wait, what?
I have the quintessential sexual question for everyone that I have not yet heard addressed or asked, and that's this. If there is no such thing as a real man, if there is no such thing as a real woman,
because
in other words,
sex is a thought.
Men have a penis, women have a vagina.
There's actually a line in Kindergarten Cop.
Men wear pants, women can wear dresses, boys like to play in the mud, girls like dolls. If that is all just bullshit, then why is it that transgenders want to do and look exactly like a man and what everyone thinks a man shouldn't be, and why do transgenders on the other side want to be the quintessential female?
Yes.
If there's no such thing as the quintessential male and female, then why do transgenders seek so desperately to be that prototype?
Because they're transgenders, they're not pansexuals. They're not people that have absolutely no gender identity whatsoever. Transsexuals just want to gender ID as the opposite gender. They're not ones that think that there is no gender and gender is fluid in a state of mind.
But if gender is fluid in a state of mind...
But transsexuals don't have that thought. Transsexuals want to be the opposite sex, right?
Yes.
Whereas I think it's pansexuals, I think that's the term, believe in gender fluidity.
Yes, it is all-knowing.
So that's why transsexuals want to fit in like the other quintessential.
But no one says that. No one asks the question because you might offend a transsexual.
Who gives a shit? Offend them.
But the question is, why are they trying to be exactly what everyone says you shouldn't?
Because they're transsexual. They're trying to...
And here's my biggest problem.
And I don't care. If you're a dude and you want to put on high heels and a dress and duct tape your penis between your butt cheeks, knock yourself out.
Right.
I don't care.
I have no problem.
When BZ comes in those pumps,
right,
it actually looks kind of good.
Right. No,
well, especially if I wear the red ones.
Yeah.
You both said you like the red ones.
We do.
It really makes you stand out.
I don't care. Would we be like, hey, bro, sorry, you can't have a beer? No. We don't.
But it goes back to the ridiculousness of the left that you can be anything you want just because you want to be it versus earn it, so to speak, right? I mean, you look at everybody wins. This is everybody wins on a much more bizarre scale.
But you know what?
I mean, you're looking at the state of California prison system is now okaying bras for transgender male prisoners.
Yes. So look, here's how batshit crazy the left is also.
Feel better, don't you?
So the left is so batshit crazy that on one hand they're saying, look, science says that global, you have to go on what science says, and science says Big Bang Theory, and we can't teach creationism because that's not science, and science is global warming, which is bullshit science, but it's science. But wait a sec, guys, doesn't science determine whether you're a man or a woman through your DNA? Well, no. Huh?
You want to hear about science? You guys want to hear about science? What? This is glorious. Only 1% of papers, scientific papers, in scientific journals follow the scientific method. 1%. The IPCC climate forecasts meet none of that criteria. 1%. So everything that is foisted upon people about climate change, those people are assembling things not under the scientific method. They go in with an assumption and only legitimize things that go along with that particular pre-assumption. There is no scientific method anymore in science. Were you not taught that, what the scientific method was?
Well,
in elementary school, in junior high?
Here's the problem with what science has become. Science has
politicized.
become completely politicized. Exactly my point. Science has gone from...
And money.
Yeah.
Money,
absolutely.
Grants.
Absolutely.
Cash.
It's all about cash.
Tenure.
And cash
Power.
for other people. And that's what
control
science has become. Look at how many people refute climate change on a regular basis. Educated scientists from around the world, and they get treated like lunatics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because they use a science that the major science doesn't agree with, and that's the only reason why. It keeps going in all aspects of this, right? You have scientists who say you were either born a male or a female, and there's no in between. And then you have other so-called scientists who are coming out and saying, well, it's a state of mind. They're the same ones who say the Constitution's a living, breathing document. It's that same mindset of we can change whatever the parameters are to meet what we want it to be versus what the reality is. And like I said, I remind everybody that in the late 1970s, every scientist in the world agreed we were heading to a friggin' ice age. Heading to an ice age. It was on the cover of every major magazine. Time, Newsweek, all the other one. And I bring this analogy up all the time when I talk about scientists too. Look at eggs. Look at the goddamn chicken egg. How many times did it go from you can eat all of it, now you can only eat the whites, now it's okay to eat the yolks again, and then we go back to eggs again. And all over and over, and they've been studying it for years. Why? Because science changes, methods change, and things develop. The same thing with climate change.
Dr. Paul Ehrlich, 1972, The Population Bomb. I had to read that. Is the population off the charts now? Are we has the world erupted in Armageddon? No. Paul Ehrlich was crying wolf.
Right, and a lot of people do.
Paid a lot of good money to write that book.
We played a clip, and especially about climate change. We played a clip from an MIT professor who is also a scientist. Last year?
Last year.
Who was on a local radio station in Boston discussing how climate change is a fraud. And he's a climatologist. That's what he does.
And the guy who invented the Weather Channel,
right?
For example.
Right. So at the end of the day, when you start talking about transgender people, when you start talking, listen, you're making a choice. You may feel compelled to do it. You may feel like you have no other choice. But when you go in and either lop something off, put something on, wear a dress, wear this and wear that, you are including yourself into a certain group and excluding yourself from other groups, whether you want to or not. And that's human nature. I always tell the story about a guy I know who's gay, who was hosting a birthday party for their 5-year-old child, and a man showed up, full beard, the whole 9 yards, in a dress with his kids. They had no idea that he was a cross-dresser, part of the LGBTQ squared community, or whatever they call it now. And this guy was furious. Like, why would you show dress like that to a 5-year-old party? You realize the questions that's going to lead people?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying you're not welcome in society, but time and place. But I equate it to any sort of sexuality in public. And be respectful, be mindful.
Even with boy-girl couples.
Exactly, and that I've always said that.
Yeah, I don't want to see your tongue going down each other. Right.
I don't mind if you hold hands. I don't mind if you kiss each other on the cheek.
Right.
I don't mind if you kiss each other quickly. I understand that. You get focused into that moment.
Absolutely.
Whatever. But when I am in a public place and there's a dude who has a chick half over a table making out with her and they're rolling around practically, it's offensive. And I don't care.
I don't want to have
how
that
attractive
stuff.
the couple is.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. It is offensive.
What you do between consenting adults or animals in your own bedroom, I couldn't give a shite less about.
Yep.
But when you exit your house
You're
act
in public and you
properly,
have decorum.
and take a big cup of shut the fuck up.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly.
And then when you get back to your house...
And it has to do with respect.
When you get back to your house, hey, plastic sheets and Wesson oil, all right?
Right, all day long. All day long. You know, you attach a couple things to the eye hook, you
Certainly.
go for a circle on the loop-to-loop, whatever gets you through the day.
Certainly.
And nobody cares.
A
And
nice,
that's the other
a nice 30 weight applied over the fur of a squirrel? Who cares?
I always, when I have discussions with people who are gay and lesbian specifically, and we go down this road of, well, you know, most church-going people just hate the LGBT community. And I said, no.
I don't hate them.
Two things. One, if they're a church that doesn't recognize it, they ask to be left alone for the most part. Yes, you have extremism everywhere. I understand that. I'm talking about 99% of the churches or religions in this country. They want to be left alone. They don't want to have an agenda brought into their place of worship. And not just Christianity. I love how people love to push that. It's not just Christianity that doesn't want change. There are many other religions out there as well. That's number one. Number two, it isn't that I don't, or anyone else for the most part, doesn't want to see in public. The problem is what you see in a lot of heavily populated gay areas, in parades, nights, and weekends, you'll have 90% of the people who are just out and about doing all the other stuff, and then, just living life. And then you have the extremists who go out of their way to do something because they quote-unquote can, and create... How many times have you seen a parade from San Francisco where there are people running around with assless chaps dry humping each other on a float in public?
Oh, yeah.
Right? But again, it comes back to public decency.
They do it because they can.
It's public decency. And oftentimes I feel that the community doesn't want equal rights. I feel that the leaders in those communities want more rights. And when you talk to a lot of very moderate gay and lesbians, they agree that they're being used for something that they have no interest in.
Pink Pistols.
Yes, absolutely.
Pink Pistols, Log Cabin Republic. Look, this is breaking news, so I want to get to it. There was a late-night press conference with Republican lawmakers and the Democratic governor of North Carolina, Ray Cooper, that they've reached an agreement to, it sounds like, do away with House Bill number 2 enacted last year, which was the transgender bathroom bill.
Okay.
Which it basically limited non-discrimination protections and requires. So now the new law they're saying is going to require them to use corresponding restrooms with the sex that's on their birth certificate. So the new proposal is going to repeal House Bill 2, but still leave the state legislatures in charge of policy on public restrooms. So local governments are basically going to be forbidden from passing local ordinances covering sexual orientation and gender identity regarding non-discrimination.
And it should be a state issue.
Yes.
The federal government, again, should stay the fuck out of it.
I agree.
Dan Butcher in chat made an absolutely, I think, scintillating point here, but I think he's slightly overestimating. He wrote, the argument for transgenders in public restrooms turns common sense totally upside down. Pennsylvania is an example. The U.S. Census Bureau interactive map of transgenders by state shows that there are 4.7 transgender people per 100,000 population. Pennsylvania's population is 12.8 million. Therefore, there are only 602 transgenders in the entire state. Why are 12.8 million people being inconvenienced by 602 gender-confused people?
I
Further,
agree wholeheartedly.
I was trained. I don't know what you guys are hearing in your places of employment, because this stuff does get addressed. As a law enforcement officer,
in the SHR hallways?
Right, exactly. As a law enforcement officer, I had people coming in from the gay community that were telling me that 10% of the U.S. population is gay, and that was a figure, and you could not dispute it. Number one, it's wrong. It's about 4 to 5%. Of that population of the United States that's gay, it's not 10%.
Wait a second, are we saying gay as in happy, or?
Gay as in gay.
Oh, you might have missed that episode. We took back the hate.
Oh, okay.
So gay can only be used to refer to happy. Yeah.
And of that
so you can say
percentile-
homosexual or lesbian.
Of that percentile of persons that fall into the category of gay, less than 1% are transgender. So we're doing, just as Dan Butcher wrote in chat, we're going overboard to accommodate such an infinitesimal amount of people.
Look at how often we do this in this country, though. We overreact for a small number under the guise of inequality, when the reality is what you're doing is you're changing the face of society.
Yes, that is exactly it.
In an effort to appease a smaller number of people.
I wouldn't even say it's appeasal, right? You bend it to, you use that minor issue as a way to move that Overton window, right? To move the window for what's acceptable, to get society to where you want it to be.
It's societal terraforming is exactly what it is.
But I also believe, and I know you'll both agree with me on this, and our listeners most likely will too. Any parent who okays their child under the age of 18 to go through any sort of gender transformation surgery
should be shot.
I think it's child abuse.
It is child
abuse.
I think that's child abuse.
I think it's child. I agree.
For an excellent reason. There are 2 articles that I was going to write about, going to blog about, that I came across in the same week last week from 2 entirely separate news organizations of people that went through sexual changes as adults that want to go
and
back.
It's very, very common. Listen, when you're in your teens...
And you think a child knows how to do that?
You were dealing with hormones. You're dealing with becoming mature. You're dealing with trying to graduate high school, decide what you want to be in life, where you want to go with life. You have all these pressures. And just like people listen to different music and all these other things, if people act out. Right? People act out. And all of a sudden, hey, you know what? Dad's really mad at me, and you know what? Pissing him off if I dress like a girl. Or whatever.
That's
whatever
what kids do. They rebel.
At the age of 15, you are not allowed to drive. You're not allowed to sign legal documents. You're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z.
No, but you get an abortion without your parents being told about it, and you can get gender reassignment surgery.
And you can get gender reassignment surgery. And I always get absolutely, like, you have these groups who say, oh, well, you can't call a baby a he or she because now you're instilling some sort of gender on these people. I'm like, well, I was born with a penis. It's a
That's
he.
how you learn.
Right. It's born with a penis. It's a he. Science has told us that. You remember science, the thing you guys put.
God has told us that.
Yeah, but even science agrees with it.
Right.
And the rest of non-Western civilizations are pointing their fingers at us and saying, you're insane. And they're right. To do this...
Yeah, of course it's insane.
To children...
Of
is
course
insane.
It's insane.
You may as well say that when I was in child abuse, in the Child Abuse Bureau, people have ranges for children. You might as well say that the people who represent NAMBLA pick a child. You know, maybe a favorite is infant to 1 year. Whatever you want to do with that child, that's fine.
It's acceptable now.
Who cares?
Well, and you have people who are arguing that pedophilia is more of a mental illness than or mental conditioning versus a criminal act. And there are psychologists out there, and there's a reason I don't trust psychologists and therapists on a large level. Yeah. But they're out there, and they're making these arguments to excuse the criminal behavior of these people.
That's because morality is in flux, right? We're no longer a Judeo-Christian country. Religion is horrible. You can't have morals because morals are based on a religious code. Based on, whether you agree with it or not, they're based on the Ten Commandments. They're based on religion. They're based on some form of right or wrong. And as you start to manipulate what is right and what is wrong, and there is no clear right or wrong anymore, that's when you start getting about the rehabilitation and, it's not their fault and it's a mental illness, it's not really a crime.
Mm-hmm. Here's another issue, or here's an article that Dan submitted in chat. And again, it's insanity writ large. It's from the Daily Caller. The headline reads, Muslim professor insists Jesus wasn't crucified. Christian student suspended after disagreeing. Where do we come up with this stuff? A Christian college student has been suspended after allegedly challenging his Muslim professor's claims that Jesus wasn't crucified and that his disciples did not think he was God. This guy, whose name I shall not mention, a sophomore at Rollin College in Florida, was suspended after disagreeing with these assertions made by his professor, some Muslim piece of shit, in his Middle Eastern Humanities class, as reported by the College Fix.
So, does that college get public funding?
That's a good question. Excellent point, Clint, because now that brings up sanctuary cities.
Right.
The argument for sanctuary cities is United States, anybody else, you don't have the right to not send us the money. Well, do we have the right to not send the money to this particular college? The city of Seattle has already instigated a lawsuit against the Trump presidency because of his sanctuary city policy. That is to say, Jeff Sessions having come out and said, you're subject to losing federal dollars if you don't comply. So what these cities and these people are saying is, you don't have the right to stop the flow of money to us because we want it.
Right. We deserve it.
Right.
Well, this has been a fun topic.
We don't have the right, but we have the authority.
Yeah.
You're right. We don't have the right because governments don't have rights. We have the authority to stop the funding. Because, look, we're not going to sign the check. A judge can't make us sign the check. A judge can't make us hit the send button.
How long will it be before...
What would a judge do?
Well,
if they rule and the Trump administration says, fuck you, no, we're not going to do it. We're not sending you the money.
That's the deal. What would happen if one day in this country, some federal judge, because that's who it's going to be first, makes some kind of an issuance or a ruling, an opinion, and the people to whom it's pointed say no?
Yeah.
Who is the ultimate arbiter of whether or not that gets enforced? Let me make it...
Because it would be the executive branch.
Yeah,
the executive branch would say no.
No, it wouldn't. It would be your local law enforcement officers. What if one day you gave an edict and a cop didn't show up? That's the only way that gets enforced.
Yeah, well, here, what I'm saying is on the federal level, on the local level, if a judge get an edict and that cop didn't show up, another agency would arrest that cop.
Right.
You know what would happen. And if another agency wouldn't, the federal agency would. So depending on which court gave that order. If it was a federal order, you know that's what would happen. But if a federal judge issues that against the executive branch enforces that order. The judicial branch doesn't have cops that are going to go take action against the executive branch. So it would be the executive branch, the DOJ or something like that, that would have to take action against the Trump administration. Well, if the executive branch did basically what What's His Biscuit did when he says, "Yeah, I'm not going to prosecute myself for the congressional member." That jackass Holder.
Yes. Oh, you're right. Eric Holder said yes. He said he wasn't going to. Yes.
I'm not going to prosecute me. So Trump would say, yeah, I'm not going to prosecute me. Fuck you. I'm not sending the money.
But what are they going to do?
Would that not be a check on the judicial branch?
Absolutely. Absolutely would be. Absolutely would be.
These are questions that are going to be addressed in the not too terribly distant future. It's coming to that.
Hard, and we're going to have to deal with it.
Yep. It's coming.
Folks, that's
and furthermore,
I think we're done.
Folks, that's it for the Sackheads Radio Show. It was great to be back. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all your
triumvirate of fear.
No problem, Twinkle Toes.
The next time I have a recital, I'll make sure I time it a little bit better and give myself some recovery time.
Recital.
Where's your song?
My song?
Uh-huh.
Hold on.
Elton John, your song?
No, it's Shaun's.
No, I know what he
Shaun's
wants.
theme song.
Okay, there we go. Nice.
Isn't that song more than 20 years old? We can use it, right?
I don't mess with anyone that owns a network. Folks, that's it for the Sackheads Radio Show. We'll be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Make sure you check out all the other great shows here on the SHR.
Hey, Susan Katz-Keating. Military and intelligence expert is going to be on my show tomorrow night.
I was going to say, BZ, do you want to make a plug? But apparently you do. Go ahead, sir. Oh, look, Ken woke up in the chat room.
I'm done.
Well, everyone's going tonight. Everyone's just going. Anyone else want to dick with me? No, that's fine. Just don't you worry about my speech. Everyone just jump right in. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast, right here on the SHR Media Network.
Thank you.
The Below V.
Thank you very much.
Ballroom. We will see you next week.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best conservative talk, Sackhead Shaun and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Jackassery Radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.